All right, folks, here we go. Celtic got the win to kick off the season. But if you're sitting there thinking that result tells the full story, let me stop you right there. That wasn't comfortable. It wasn't convincing. And it sure as hell wasn't. The kind of statement you'd expect from a side that's meant to be defending its title. 1-0 over St. Mirren at Celtic Park sounds fine on paper. But if you were there or watching from home, you'll know exactly what I mean when I say it was a slog. The kind of afternoon where you walk away relieved, not excited. Now, let's not sugarcoat it. That performance was flat. From the opening whistle, Celtic tried to show a bit of urgency, and for the first 15-20 minutes, you thought, all right, maybe we're onto something here. Kieran Tierney and Alistair Johnston were looking to go long early bypassing. The back and forth at the back that sometimes kills the tempo. There was a bit of directness, some long balls floated up toward Ida, and a few early signals that the team was at least trying to play with intent. But that didn't last long. After that first burst, the energy dropped off a cliff. The tempo disappeared, the movement dried up, and suddenly the game felt like one of those preseason runouts where players are still figuring out their fitness levels. It got lethargic. The crowd sensed it too. You could hear the murmurs and groans growing louder every time the ball went backwards instead of forward. And let me tell you, there were a lot of backwards passes. The midfield trio of CALLUM, McGREGOR, Rayo Hatate, and Daniel Negron, on paper, that's a combo with skill control and dynamism. But in reality, it looked like three players who never played together. No chemistry, no clarity. At times, they seemed unsure of who was supposed to drop deep, who was meant to drive forward, and who was linking play. It was all so cautious. The ball would get to the halfway line, someone would turn, and instead of finding an attacking option, it'd just go back to Carter Vickers or Scales. Over and over again. It's frustrating to watch that, especially after last season when Celtic, at their best, played with such speed and swagger. You think back to that flying start. 4-0 away at Kilmarnock goals, flying in confidence, oozing from every pass. This time around, though, that same swagger was nowhere to be seen. And what you got instead was a nervous, disjointed Celtic side that looked like it was still stuck in neutral. But thankfully, football is not always about playing pretty. Sometimes it's about finding a way. And Celtic, to their credit, did find a way, eventually. Let's talk about the man who made the difference, James Forrest. 34 years old Celtic through and through, and still coming off the bench to rescue games. When he came on, everything changed. He didn't overcomplicate things. He didn't slow the play down. He just got the ball drove at his man whipped. In crosses stretched the play and created a bit of chaos. He gave the team with purpose, more importantly, belief. You could feel the change immediately. Forrest brings a calmness but also an urgency. He knows exactly when to push and when to hold. And for a team that was struggling to unlock a well-organized St. Mirren defense, he was the spark they desperately needed. Let's be honest, James Forrest is not supposed to be the guy we rely on at this stage of his career. He's not the fresh face or the big money signing. He's the veteran, the dependable one. The one who knows how to show up when others can't find their feet. And yet time and again, that's exactly what he does. Whether it's against Hearts Hibs or, like today, a stubborn St. Mirren side, Forrest continues to show why he's still an asset to this club. Not just for what he brings on the pitch, but for what his presence does to the rest of the team. The moment he stepped onto the pitch, the hesitation disappeared. There was a purpose again, and that's priceless. Of course it wasn't just Forrest, who made an impact. Luke McCowan came on and scored the winner. Not the prettiest goal you'll ever see, a deflected shot that wrong-footed the keeper. But a goal's a goal, and that one mattered. Celtic had been knocking on the door, sure. But with every passing minute, you could feel the pressure rising inside Celtic Park. The tension was thick. The crowd was restless. The idea of dropping points in the first game of the season at home, after such a quiet summer window, it would have been a disaster. And that's the wider issue here. This performance, while rescued by a moment of fortune, exposed all the concerns that fans have been shouting about for weeks. The lack of recruitment, the lack of depth in certain positions, the reliance on players who are clearly not ready to carry the load. Adam Ida, for example, had plenty of the ball in the first half. The team looked for him, tried to use his physicality, played balls into his feet and into space. And what did he do with it? Not nearly enough. He didn't link play, he didn't stretch the defense, and when chances did fall his way, he just didn't look sharp. And for someone we spent serious money on, that's a red flag right there. If he's the main striker this season, Celtic could be in trouble. And what about Yang? He started out wide, but every time he got the ball, he looked uncertain. Cut inside, passed backwards, never really threatened his man. It's become clear that he's more of a bench option, someone who can maybe impact a game when the opposition's tired, not someone you start when you need a win from the first whistle. Brendan Rodgers rolled the dice starting him, and it didn't pay off. Now you might say, well, it's only the first game. And yes, you're right, but first impressions matter. And when you look around the league, Hearts looking sharp. Motherwell playing well, even St. Mirren putting in a shift. You realize there's no room for Celtic to stumble early on, especially not when the fans are already feeling let down by a lack of ambition in the transfer window. The fact that Inamura wasn't even on the bench speaks volumes. When Tierney went off, thankfully smiling at the end and seemingly okay, there was no natural left back to bring on. Instead, Scales had to shift wide and Trusty slotted into centre back. That's not a crisis yet, but it shows how thin the squad is in certain areas, and this is Celtic. This is a club that's supposed to be aiming for a deep European run and another dominant domestic campaign. We shouldn't be scraping by at home because we are light in key positions. And let's not even talk about the Johnny Kenny substitution, with the game still at 0-0 and Brendan Rodgers deciding to bring on Kenny instead of Shin Yamada, a player many fans were excited to see. It felt like a conservative, maybe even puzzling call. Kenny might be highly rated internally, but he's not the spark you need in that moment, at least not yet. If we're not using a player like Yamada in that situation, then when still as much as there was frustration, there was also relief. The scenes after McCowan's goal said it all. Utter tension lifted, the players relaxed, the crowd erupted, and even though it was just one goal and one win, it felt massive. Because a draw, or worse, on opening day could have spiraled into full-blown crisis mode. Just like that infamous St. Johnstone match a few years ago, the mood would have turned, the pressure on the board would have skyrocketed, and the narrative around this team would be very different right now. One last thing before we wrap this part. Did anyone else notice the pitch? It looked dry, patchy in areas, and honestly not up to standard. This is Celtic Park, game 1 of the season. This is supposed to be the best condition it's in all year. If it's already showing wear and tear, now what's it going to look like in January, February? It's just another little sign, along with a tired-looking stadium concourse and underwhelming recruitment, that maybe the club isn't operating at full capacity behind the scenes, and that's something that has to change. Celtic got away with one here. They got the win, but they also got a warning that this squad, this structure, this setup, it needs more, because we've seen what this league can throw at you. We've seen what happens when you rest on your laurels. And while 3 points is always welcome, the manner of this victory tells us plenty about where we are and where we're not. So yes, enjoy the win, but don't let it blind you to the work that still needs to be done. If we're being honest with ourselves, this wasn't just a narrow win, it was a warning shot across the bow for Celtic Football Club. A reminder that in football, especially in Glasgow, reputation means nothing if you can't back it up on the pitch. And when you've got supporters filling Celtic Park expecting a display of dominance to kick off the new campaign, what we got instead was a performance that mirrored the worries bubbling just beneath the surface all summer long. Let's talk a bit more about that midfield, because it's a real concern. CALLUM McGREGOR, the captain, has been Mr. Consistent for years. A player you can rely on to set the tempo, pick the passes, and lead by example. But against St. Mirren, even he looked unsure of what the game plan actually was. He had moments where he tried to get things going, dropping deep, spreading the play, but too often it ended in another pass backwards. You can almost hear the crowd groan every time that sequence repeated. McGREGOR to Hatate to Scales to Schmeichel, rinse and repeat. Possession with no purpose, and that's the heart of it. There was no real identity in that. Midfield. Real Hatate, when he's at his best, brings drive and unpredictability. He takes risks, plays between the lines, offers movement that unsettles defenses. But that version of Hatate didn't show up. He buzzed around, sure, but nothing really stuck. His passing was off, his touches lacked conviction, and the usual spark just wasn't there. Then there's Daniel Negron, a player who caught the eye in preseason. There were genuine hopes that he'd slot in and add something fresh. But under the bright lights of his competitive debut, he looked overwhelmed. Not awful, just anonymous. Not what you want from a player who's meant to be part of the midfield engine. And it's not just down to individual form. It's structure. It's instructions. Too many times they looked like they didn't know what they were supposed to be doing. There was a real disconnect between the midfield and the attack. A hesitation. Like they weren't sure whether to press, to sit, to pass short, or go long. That's not a criticism of one player or another. That's on the system. That's on the manager. Now, I know Brendan Rodgers is only just into his second stint, and there's always going to be a period of transition. But the thing is, Celtic can't afford a slow start. This is a club that doesn't get grace periods. Every game matters. Every dropped point can come back to haunt you. And for all the talk about needing time, the fans aren't daft. They can see that this squad isn't where it needs to be. And they've been saying it for weeks. You look at that bench and you realize just how thin things are. No Inamura. No new winger brought in during the summer. No real competition for Adam Ida up front. The decisions Brendan's having to make, like throwing Johnny Kenny on at 0-0, aren't signs of faith in youth, they're signs of necessity. There simply aren't enough options. And that's not on the manager, that's on the recruitment team and the people upstairs. This summer should have been about building on last year's success, strengthening key areas, bringing in players who walk into the starting 11 and raise the standard. Instead, it's felt like a waiting game, like the club was holding out hoping they could get by with what they had. And yes, sometimes you can do that in this league, but not for long. Not when teams like Hearts Aberdeen and even St. Mirren are well-drilled and full of belief. St. Mirren, by the way, deserve a bit of credit. They didn't come to just sit behind the ball and hoof it clear. They were compact, yes, and hard to break down, but they were also composed, fit, focused. You could tell they were drilled all week to frustrate, to exploit any sign of complacency from Celtic. And for 80 minutes it was working. They weren't exactly threatening much going forward, but that wasn't the point. Their game plan was to hold Celtic at arm's length and wait for the nerves to creep in. And the nerves did creep in. By the time the game ticked into the final 10 minutes, you could feel it. The anxiety in the stands, the groans turning into shouts, the impatience growing with every aimless cross or backward pass. If that game ends goalless, you're talking about full-blown crisis mode. The kind of toxic atmosphere we haven't seen since that infamous afternoon against St. Johnstone, a result that triggered protests, banners, and weeks of headlines. Instead, Luke McCowan deflected one into the net and everyone breathed again. You'd think it was a cup final the way the place erupted. Relief more than celebration, because people know this team has levels to go up. They've seen what Celtic can do when it clicks, and this wasn't it, not even close. The goal, by the way, was scrappy. Not a flowing move, not a piece of individual brilliance, just persistence, a bit of luck, and someone willing to have a hit. But that's football sometimes. You don't always need to score the perfect goal, you just need to score. And McCowan, fair play to him, made the most of his moment. He's not a player anyone's expecting to start every week, but as a bench option, he's got a knack for turning up when it matters. You need those guys. Still, you can't build a season on moments like that. You need a plan, a clear identity, and more importantly, you need players. Right now, Celtic look like a team that's waiting for reinforcements that might not come, and that's dangerous. Let's not forget the Champions League qualifiers are just around the corner. These are high-stakes matches. Fail to prepare and you're out. No group stage, no European nights at Paradise, no big money injection. The squad that struggled to beat St. Mirren at home is the same squad that's expected to navigate a tricky qualifier and then go toe-to-toe with Europe's best. That's a gamble, a massive one. You've also got the added pressure of the league looking a bit sharper this season. Hearts are moving well. Motherwell look tidy. Even the so-called bottom sides like Falkirk and Dundee United are playing progressive football. Stevie said it himself. There's less long ball, more passing, more teams willing to have a go. That raises the bar for Celtic. The days of coasting through the league are over. If you turn up playing at 70%, someone's gonna take points off you. The pitch was another strange detail. You'd expect it to be pristine. Opening day, Celtic Park, thousands in the stands. But it looked dry, patchy in places. Not horrendous, but not what it should be. And it begs the question if things aren't. Being maintained properly off the pitch, is that a symptom of bigger issues? Maybe it's nothing, but it felt symbolic. Just like the stadium concourse, which some fans said looked tired and run down. These things add up. They feed into the feeling that Celtic, for all its history and stature, is running on fumes in some areas. That's why this win, while important, can paper over the cracks. The board needs to act, the manager needs support, and the players need clarity. Because if they don't get it, and soon, then the goodwill from this result will evaporate fast. But amidst the concern, there's always space for praise. James Forrest deserves every bit of it. Came off the bench, took control, didn't shrink under pressure. 34 years old, still showing the younger lads how it's done. You don't buy that kind of experience. You live it. And Tierney, before going off, was another bright spark. Looked sharp, aggressive, always trying to make something happen. Those are the standards. Those are the players who know what it means to wear that shirt. And Celtic need more of them. So the new point system begins. Forrest gets the full 3, Tierney takes 2, McCowan gets 1 for the goal that saved the day. It's a fun way to track performances across the season, but it also makes one thing very clear: the guys who made the difference weren't the new signings. They were the old guard, the reliable ones, the ones who've been through it all before. That tells you something, doesn't it? The transfer window's still open. There's still time to fix this, but the clock is ticking. And if Celtic want to avoid turning more wins into warnings, they need to act fast. The squad needs strengthening, the ideas need sharpening, and the ambition, it needs to match the expectations of his fan base, because they deserve more than a scrappy 1-0 and a thank God we won mentality. Next up, it's Aberdeen away. That'll be no picnic either. If Celtic turn up like they did today, they'll get punished. Simple as that. And Brendan Rodgers knows it. The players know it, and every single supporter in the stands knows it too. It's not about panic, not yet. It's about urgency, because one win doesn't make a season, but how you respond to the warning signs that can define everything. Before we proceed, subscribe to our channel and enable notifications to receive all exclusive news about Celtic FC. Don't miss any details about your favorite team. It's extremely important for Celtic FC fans. There's a storm quietly brewing behind the scenes in Scottish football, and it centers on a name that's been making headlines for all the right reasons lately. Angus Gunn, the Scotland national team goalkeeper currently plying his trade in England, has allegedly rejected a potential move to Celtic Park under curious circumstances. While the transfer itself had been floating around as a likely summer shocker, sources close to the situation suggest that Gunn has laid down a firm condition. He refuses to join the Glasgow Giants while Callum McGREGOR continues to wear the captain's armband. This unexpected stance has left both fans and pundits puzzled, as Gunn has always maintained a professional and low-profile public image. The goalkeeper's rumored discontent appears to stem from behind-the-scenes dynamics rather than footballing. Matters fueling speculation of a deeper rift or a clash of personalities. Though the claim has yet to be officially confirmed by Gunn or Celtic representatives, the mere idea of a player demanding a change in captaincy before considering a FY transfer is enough to send shockwaves through the Scottish game. With Celtic eyeing reinforcements between the sticks, this twist in the tale raises more questions than answers, and the whispers are growing louder by the day. For many, the notion that Angus Gunn would take such a hardline stance might sound implausible, but insiders suggest there's more substance to the rumor than one might initially assume. McGregor, who has captained Celtic with distinction since taking over from Scott Brown, is widely regarded as a figure of stability and leadership at Parkhead. Yet not all players, especially potential newcomers, see eye to eye with entrenched club hierarchies. It's been speculated in footballing circles that Gunn, perhaps eyeing a more influential role at the club or wary of particular leadership styles, feels McGregor's ongoing captaincy could clash with his own ambitions or personality. One unnamed source claimed that the pair had a terse exchange during a Scotland international camp earlier this year, with tensions lingering beyond the dressing room. Whether rooted in footballing philosophy, training ground habits, or even off-pitch demeanor, the alleged friction has apparently been enough to make Gunn hesitate. What's even more intriguing is that Celtic had reportedly made Gunn their top target for the upcoming window, only to be met with radio silence once McGregor's status was made clear. If true, this power struggle could place manager Brendan Rodgers in an awkward position heading into the new season. The timing of this rumored standoff could not be more precarious for Celtic. With the Champions League campaign looming and domestic rivals strengthening across the board, the Hoops had been aiming to bolster their squad with reliable experience. particularly in goal. Joe Hart's retirement left a gaping void, and Gunn's profile appeared to tick every box: Premier League experience, a strong recent run with Scotland, and at 29 entering his prime. But the potential fallout from this captaincy controversy threatens to derail Celtic's summer plans. Supporters have already begun speculating on social media, dissecting old training photos and post-match interviews for any hint of frostiness between the two men. Some fans are firmly backing McGREGOR, calling Gunn's rumored condition disrespectful and entitled, while others are urging the club to reconsider its leadership if it means landing a top-tier keeper. Celtic's board now finds itself in an unenviable position. Back a captain who's long been the face of stability, or entertain the possibility of change to attract a high-profile signing. The silence from both camps is only fueling further intrigue, and as always in Glasgow, where football is religion, whispers travel fast. Adding further complexity to this simmering saga is the curious lack of denial from either party. Neither Gunn nor McGregor has addressed the rumors directly, and Celtic have issued no formal comment on the matter, a decision that has only intensified speculation. Some observers believe this silence is strategic, allowing all involved to gauge the public reaction before making any definitive statements. Others suspect the club may be trying to broker peace behind the scenes, hoping to salvage a deal that satisfies both parties without fracturing squad unity. However, the optics are increasingly difficult to manage. McGregor, for all his accolades and consistency, is now facing the first real test of his leadership from outside the club. Meanwhile, Gunn's growing reputation as a top-tier goalkeeper makes him an attractive prospect not only for Celtic but also for other clubs in need of a reliable number one. Should Celtic fail to land him, questions will inevitably arise about the club's internal harmony and recruitment priorities. Was this purely about personalities, or are there deeper issues at play within the Parkhead setup? The longer the situation festers, the more it threatens to overshadow Celtic's pre-season preparations, and perhaps even shake the foundations of the dressing room dynamic. What remains clear is that this rumor has legs, and whether or not it culminates in a dramatic transfer twist, it has already left its mark on Celtic's summer narrative. The notion that a player of Angus Gunn's caliber would draw such a bold line in the sand, refusing to join unless the captaincy changes, raises eyebrows across the footballing world. For a club steeped in tradition and hierarchy, such a condition is nothing short of seismic. Should McGregor be forced to address the claims, it could either reaffirm his position or expose cracks that had previously gone unnoticed. For Gunn, this story has placed him firmly under the spotlight, raising questions about his motivations, character, and future ambitions. The coming weeks will be crucial, not just in determining whether this transfer goes ahead, but in revealing how Celtic navigate one of the more unusual challenges in recent memory. Football is often shaped by rumors, but some whispers carry weight, and this one, it seems, won't be going away anytime soon. Whether truth or just tantalizing gossip, the Gunn-McGregor saga is now firmly part of the Parkhead discourse, and its ripples could stretch far beyond the summer window. Hello, fan! Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, as it means a lot to Celtic FC. Also, share your opinion about the news in the comments below. See you in the next video.